You're listening to Blast Podcasting, episode 22.
Go Power Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Blast Podcasting. I'm your host, Xander Skullion, and of course, I'm joined with
Anthony, your co-host.
Yeah, or we're both the hosts here.
We're both the hosts.
We're very diplomatic here.
Yeah, unlike another podcast I hosted.
Oh yeah,
that's dead. Thank God. I know. I'm not trying to bring drama. It's just me being outspoken. So.
And this is quite the podcast to be outspoken on because we have a lot to cover this episode. First of all, I mean, our main topic is going to be Power Rangers, which I know Reploid Bill, who's listening, he is really excited about this. He's one of the biggest Power Ranger fans I know, other than my friend Chris, DC Verdaya. But there's been a little bit of news going on that I wanted to get your input on, Anthony, and that is the new reveal of the new Batman suit. Have you seen this yet?
Yeah, it's not bad. I know a lot of people are complaining about it, but you know what? The thing about Batman that's so strange is it has a history of people complaining and then getting proven wrong all the time. And I'm not I'm talking pre-internet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking Batman 89.
Yeah, Michael Keaton.
There were boycotts at comic book shops and all kinds of stupid shit.
I mean, what people don't realize is when Michael Keaton got the cowl for Batman 89, he was mainly known as a comedian, like a funny actor. And no one could picture the guy who played Beetlejuice, or wasn't he in Mr. Mom? Mm-hmm. No one could picture him being Batman. And he didn't look the part. I mean, he wasn't. It's funny because we think of Robert Pattinson, and everyone's talking about how he hasn't bulked up yet. He needs to bulk up. You know, Michael Keaton wasn't bulky at all. Like he wasn't like he didn't have a six pack and abs and stuff. I mean, hell, there was times where he wasn't even in the suit. They hired a male belly dancer to walk around as Batman. Like, so I mean, it's funny because you're right. Every time there's a new Joker or new Batman that's cast, it's always people are complaining about it, and people are proven wrong most of the time.
Yeah, and then there's, like Heath Ledger, which I know you're not a fan of, and I'm kind of a fan. We've talked about this before. It's in the archives. Go. I think what episode?
I think it was like episode 5 or 6 or something like that. We talked about Batman,
and when we did a whole episode on Joker,
so
we probably touched on it then.
Yeah,
but anyway, I the point is people were mostly proven wrong with Heath Ledger, and then Joaquin Phoenix. Now, interesting, I'm not a big follower of the Academy Awards, but fun fact, Joker is the only character in the history of the Academy Awards where people have won awards for playing him twice.
Yeah.
He is ironically enough, a comic book character is the only role that has garnered people 2 Academy Awards.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. The Joker. The fucking Joker.
and speaking of Joker, I have to kind of admit something. I haven't sat down and watched a full episode, but every time the trailers come up, I've been watching it, and I've been laughing hysterically more than I expected. But have you seen clips of that Harley Quinn cartoon?
Yeah, I've seen clips of it, but I haven't watched it, though.
I haven't watched it, but holy shit, it's funny.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. I should. I have DC Universe, obviously, which probably doesn't surprise anyone. But speaking of Harley Quinn, did you see Birds of Prey?
I didn't.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this. I got to say this though, real quick about movies. You saw Sonic though, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I saw a movie last night, and it's a movie that everyone's been talking about, and I have to say it lives up to the hype. And it's not Sonic the Hedgehog.
Are you talking about Birds of Prey?
No, Parasite.
Oh yeah. I've been wanting to watch that.
Watch it. It's a fucking masterpiece. It is a fucking fantastic film. Yeah. It's just so fucking good. It is so goddamn good, and it's so thought-provoking and so deep that I want to watch it again. And it's wonderfully done, and it's a good. What's great about it is it's a commentary on class structure, and it does it it commentates on it on both sides. It doesn't fuck it. I don't think it exactly takes sides, but it shows the ramifications of what class culture can do.
Yeah, I was so confused when I first heard about Parasite because I just saw the anime and the manga. Like everyone's like, "Yeah, Parasite," and I'm like, "Holy shit, Parasite!" And I'm like, "Wait, that's not Parasite."
Oh yeah, it's not the anime. This has nothing to do with that. There's no science fiction or horror. But if you like Snowpiercer and The Host, which is because it's the same director.
Yeah.
Which have you seen those?
I haven't seen those.
You haven't seen. I think Snowpiercer's on something. You got to watch Snowpiercer.
I could definitely find. I can find it. I have a jailbroken Fire Stick I got for Christmas, so I could definitely find it.
Oh shit! But yeah, watch Paris. You could probably watch Parasite.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw it pop up on my Fire Stick, and that's how I watched the Mister Rogers movie, which was very good, but it wasn't what I was expecting. Because when we see the trailers, it looks like a bio film about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers.
Right.
But it's not. It's about this, and not spoiling anything, but it's about this journalist who kind of lost his way with life being a journalist and kind of seeing things through just very, very dreary. And he's got his own life issues, and he ends up getting the job to interview Mr. Rogers, and his experience with Mr. Rogers changes his life, and it was based off a true story too. So it was really good, but it wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah. Do you remember in the 90s all the strange... I not changing subject, but do you remember all the strange rumors about Mr. Rogers being a creep and shit?
I remember the rumors of him being like a freaking Navy SEAL and a sharpshooter, and he had like full-on arm tattoos like a fucking Yakuza. That's what that's what I remember.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, there was ones that he would like want to watch public beatings in Korea and shit. Or
oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's so many fucking weird rumors.
Oh man. But yeah, I would say the Mr. Rogers movie. I think it's called "Won't You Be My Neighbor." Definitely check it out, especially if you grew up watching Mr. Rogers. Tom Hanks does a great job. I mean, it was that sort of method acting that you could definitely start to lose that it was Tom Hanks, that it felt like you were watching Mr. Rogers.
Gotcha. So it's pretty good.
Oh yeah, yeah. And and Sonic was really good too. Sonic felt like a 90s movie that was in the vault for, 30 plus years, and they finally decided to make it into a movie because it's so 90s.
Talk about a movie that exceeded everyone's expectations though.
Oh yeah, everyone wanted this movie to fail. Like,
and it did it. It broke records, and it's probably #1 again. And
it's the highest grossing video game movie ever right now.
I think it's the video game movie everyone's been waiting for too, which no one expected it to be.
Yeah, and one of the things too that I've was talking to some of our friends about was, if you notice, like Sonic the Hedgehog was really good. Detective Pikachu did really well. I watched a little bit of Detective Pikachu. I wasn't really feeling it, but I could see where folks like it. But the thing is like, have you noticed, like, video game movies are starting to get good? And I have a weird theory about this, and I think I know why video game movies are starting not to suck. It's because the people that are in Hollywood making video game movies fucking played video games.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, when we had, Super Mario Brothers movie, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, which I like Mortal Kombat. Street Fighter is good in its own way, but
it's a parody.
Yeah,
you got to look at it as a parody of the game.
Yeah, and whenever you see any interviews by the directors and they mention the video game, they're like, "Yeah, I played it for 5 minutes," or my son really liked the game. Like, there's no one at that time that was like really into video games that were like, I really want to make this into a movie. And Sonic and Detective Pikachu have something both in common. They were taking a live action actor and pairing him with a cartoon like CG character. And that's such a good combo, because you think of some of the other movies that did so well. You think of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like, that was a good thing. Cool World. You think of movies like that and you're like, or Space Jam. Something about that dynamic of having like a real person with a CG now, but at the time animated character. I think that does a great thing of mending the two worlds together and makes it seem more approachable to not only the fans but for newcomers as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's when you have the human character, it's really the bridge.
Yeah.
It so, but some movies I don't think you can do that though. Now
Yeah.
I know we're getting a Mario movie in a couple years,
Mm-hmm.
and that I think would be tricky considering Mario's a human. So
Yeah, I think the Mario movie's just going to be all CG. I think it's just going to be a CG movie, which would work out.
yeah, yeah. Last time we saw it as a live action, it was I don't know what the fuck that was, but
The actors didn't know what it was. I mean, the guy who played Mario was drunk out of his mind the whole time that he was filming that movie. I can't remember his name, but he was also in Roger Rabbit and Hook, which is a really good movie. But the whole time he was drunk.
well, yeah.
Can you
That
blame
movie-
him?
And it's so weird. Let's make Bowser a crime boss, and
Yeah.
or
You know,
what?
even though I will say Dennis Hopper did a good job. Like for what he had, he was passionate about it.
It's like Jeremy Irons' Dungeons and Dragons performance.
Yeah.
The dragons. Yeah, what the fuck was that?
I had no clue.
But anyway, Sonic the Hedgehog is great, you said.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It definitely left itself open for a sequel. And, Jim Carrey was excellent in it. Jim Carrey tapped into his 90s Jim Carrey-ness. And it was like his Robotnik made me think of, had little notes of The Mask meets the Riddler. That's what it kind of made me think of. Not what I was expecting, because when I first heard Jim Carrey was playing Dr. Robotnik, I was like, oh, he's just going to be Mr. Grinch. I could see him doing the Mr. Grinch voice being Dr. Robotnik, but it wasn't.
That's good.
Yeah. But,
And one real quick. I think this might be his comeback, because what has he done that's been notable in the last decade?
he hasn't done much. I mean,
Mr. Popper's Penguins?
yeah, I mean, pretty much before this, I mean, the only thing he's really been in the media about is the media saying he completely lost his mind. That's about it.
Yeah, and he does that TV show Kidding on Showtime. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is about a depressed Mr. Rogers.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, that his son dies and he's in the depression and he's trying to cope with his wife with a new relation. It just really sounds really like a downer.
Mm.
So, and we don't remember Jim Carrey being in downers. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And Sonic doesn't. Well, he's the bad guy and probably gets defeated, but it's not a downer.
Nah, it's funny. The whole movie itself is really funny. I mean, there were parts that I actually did like burst out laughing, and I wasn't expecting it. Because I mean, sometimes I watch comedies and I know where parts are supposed to be funny. I'm just kind of like, yeah. But then those parts I was actually really laughing about. Not to give away not to give away spoilers, but I do want to talk about a scene in the movie that was my favorite scene in the whole movie. Okay, because this is the epitome of Jim Carrey. So there's a part where Dr. Robotnik is confronting the sheriff in Green Hills, looking for Sonic. And he gets in the guy's face, and he's talking about, Dr. Robotnik's talking about how smart he is. He's like, listen here, I was making formulas while you were spitting out formula. And the sheriff's like, I was actually breastfed. And without skipping a beat, Jim Carrey goes, nice. But it was just that chemistry. I was like, oh my God, that's funny. But yeah, I do recommend it. Sonic the Hedgehog, really, really fucking good movie.
There you go.
But getting into the meat and potatoes of this episode, because I mean, this is my childhood. This is definitely what I grew up with. This is my bread and butter, and we're talking about the Power Rangers. And just for the sake of the podcast not being, an 8-hour long podcast, and not to mention, I don't think you and I have watched every single season and incarnation of Power Rangers, but we're going to try to stick more to like the Mighty Morphin and maybe a little bit of Zeo, because I know personally, like after Zeo, when it became like Power Rangers Turbo, Power Rangers in Space, I kind of moved on. I kind of moved on to other things at that time. I wasn't watching it as much,
Right.
but like the first 3 seasons of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I was just really into it. But let me ask you, Anthony, how did you get into Power Rangers?
Well, by the time that they had come out, I was already in fourth and fifth, so I was more into comic books and such.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of watched it and I dug it. And the first thing I noticed was the footage didn't match, because because the footage with the Power Rangers and all that looked really grainy compared to the footage that was filmed with them as kids.
Yeah.
So I had a feeling that it was something. You could tell it was something not from our country.
For me, I noticed that when they would show scenes with Rita Repulsa, because I was like, her lips aren't matching with what she's saying right now. So
Yeah.
I kind of figured that maybe it was because I grew up watching kung fu movies. I figured that might have been something like in Asia, because Rita is clearly a Japanese woman in a witch costume. So I was thinking it was something overseas. I didn't know, and we'll get into this. I didn't know it was completely other series called Super Sentai. I didn't even know about
Ranger.
that. Yeah, I didn't know anything about that. But for me, what got me into Power Rangers, and it's really interesting because Power Rangers, when it first came out, came on in the mornings around 8:30 in the mornings on weekdays, which is just media suicide if you're trying to go towards kids, because by the time Power Rangers was being shown on television, kids were in school, So I remember I was sick. I had to stay home, and I remember seeing commercials for Power Rangers, and I finally watched my first episode, and I was just like hooked. I loved it. I loved all the giant robots. I loved all the transformations. I loved all the fighting, the heavy metal guitar, just everything about it. I loved, and I got my mom to get me a VHS of Power Rangers, and the episode that it was the episode where they're in the carnival, and you got the skeleton with like the scarecrow hat.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was the monster in that episode I had on VHS, and I remember because I was in second grade. I remember like every Friday we could bring a movie and kids could watch it, and I decided I wanted to bring in my Power Rangers VHS, so I brought it in. I told the teacher about it. She was like, yeah, you guys can watch it. So we watched it, and I remember, like, I was the only one in the class that was in the Power Rangers, because I saw it before everyone else. So I single-handedly introduced every single classmate in that classroom to Power Rangers. And I remember right after we watched Power Rangers, it was recess time, and all the kids wanted to play Power Rangers. I mean, they were making up colors, because they're like, "Oh, I'm the Red Ranger. Oh, I'm the Blue Ranger. I'm the Pink Ranger. I'm the Yellow Ranger." And some kids like, "I'm the Brown Ranger." I mean, it got so crazy, and then everyone's outside beating the hell out of each other, and then we couldn't play Power Rangers anymore because some kid got roundhouse kick in the head and knocked his teeth out. But I remember that was what got me into it, and then I started collecting the toys. I remember the toy. You remember how expensive the toys were?
Yeah, the toys were pretty pricey.
I started collecting toys, and I had never seen bootleg toys as much as I did when Power Rangers came out. Did it seem that way to you? Like when Power Rangers came out, there was so many bootleg Power Ranger toys.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the Asian market, because of the They were probably, because of the Sentai shit, there was probably bootlegs out there already.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's a big factor in that.
Yeah, and there's no doubt there was probably like actual Sentai figures that were in the dollar store that looked bootleg to us at the time because we didn't know anything about the series. Come to think about it.
Yep. Now, real quick about Zyuranger. Now, here's the crazy thing. We live in a day and age where Zyuranger's pretty accessible.
It is.
It's very accessible, and I say this because the thing with Zyuranger is that I have Shout Factory, so they have Zyuranger, they have Car Ranger, which is Turbo, and they have a bunch. I think up to maybe about like 2004 old Sentai series, complete. Now, I don't think there's anything before Zyuranger though. They have.
Yeah.
because for those that may not know, I'm pretty sure everyone does, but a lot of kids get surprised by this. The Power Ranger franchise originated with Sentai. It's been around since the 70s,
Yep.
since like 73. So it's going to be about 50 years old.
Which is insane to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
And, oh, go ahead.
I was about to say, and you know, we wouldn't have the Power Rangers phenomenon right now in the States if it wasn't, of course, for Saban. You know, because Saban, they took the idea originally that Stan Lee had. Stan Lee really tried to push Super Sentai to the American market way earlier before Mighty Morphin. They actually made a pilot of another Sentai show. I can't remember the name of it. But, see, Marvel did a deal with Tatsunaku, which is the company that was responsible for Super Sentai and Ultraman and all that sort of television shows. They did a deal, and they made some Marvel movie or TV shows in Japan, most notably the Spider-Man Japanese show, which is going to be included in the sequel to Enter the Spider-Verse, which is really awesome.
The Japanese.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. The one that has nothing to do with Spider-Man, pretty much.
That's like completely different. That was honestly the first time that a Sentai series was introduced to giant robots. Like, if it wasn't for the Spider-Man Japanese show, we wouldn't have a Megazord.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. But, like, it's crazy to think about that.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but do you know Mighty Morphin was not the first Sentai series in the US?
That's right.
A lot of people, I saw this as a kid, and the first Sentai, there was a show on USA Network that was a comedy show. And they took, I don't know which one, I'm looking it up now, but they took one of the Sentai series and dubbed it as a comedy show. So I'm trying to, let's see. I'm trying to look up the show, but I remember it was on there, and I remember seeing it as a kid. And they, like I said, it was a comedy show. And a couple years ago, I saw clips to it.
Yeah, I don't think that was the show that I was talking about with Stan Lee. I'm trying to remember that one myself. Because I got that information from a show on Netflix that the listeners should definitely check out. Is Toys We Grew Up With, and they have an episode on Power Rangers, and it's pretty much a history on not just Power Rangers but Super Sentai, and how, you know, it started out in Japan and how they got into Super Sentai, how they got into the Tatsunaku stuff, and I hope I'm saying that right. But they got into all that, and how it just kind of turned into what it is. And now here we are with season 24 of Power Rangers Dino Morphers, which is going to have the return of the original Red Ranger.
Yeah, Beast Morphers.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this.
You said Dino Morphers.
My bad.
It's all good.
Let me ask you this, Anthony. What did you think about the changing of the Power Rangers? What I mean by that is when they changed to red, black, and yellow Ranger.
It was a little off-putting.
Yeah. Because I was always a big Jason fan, so I was automatically pissed.
But to be fair, they did it subtly.
Yeah.
Because they introduced those characters before they became Power Rangers. They didn't just suddenly appear.
Yeah. Because what had happened behind the scenes were those three actors, they weren't getting paid what they wanted to get paid, and they were kind of like, hey, we want to get paid a little bit more, because, I mean, they saw this merchandise money, and, I mean, they were getting, I think the Power Rangers, like, back then, I think they were getting paid around minimum wage at the time, and they were like, we need to make more money, and they were kind of like, okay, well, you're gone, and they had stock footage of the three actors in a couple of episodes, and then they finally added the three new actors, like started introducing them. And I remember when I saw Jason get replaced by Rocky, I was so pissed because Jason was my favorite Ranger. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because later on, about shy of 3 years ago, I got to meet Rocky. I got to meet the Red Ranger at the Fayetteville Comic Con, and what a fucking dick he is.
Ah,
Okay,
oh,
okay, to Fayetteville Comic Con. Okay, I've been to a lot of conventions. I've been to a lot of anime conventions. I mean, there was a there was a time of animazement when I went there. We got to sing "Happy Birthday" to the creator of Cowboy Bebop. I mean, if you met a Japanese voice actor or an American voice actor at Animazement and you want to get your picture taken, they didn't
right.
care. They're like, hell yeah, let's get a picture taken. Here, get your friend in it. Come on, let's go. You know, to get my pamphlet signed by the creator of Cowboy Bebop didn't cost me a dime. I just had to stand in line for 2 hours. But Fayetteville Comic Con was a total cash fest. It had all these, B-list actors and nostalgic shows that people have been in. They had the dude from freaking Flash Gordon there. He was there.
Oh shit.
And the thing is, like, everyone you met, you had to pay for the autograph, which I didn't mind. Okay, so I go up and I meet Rocky. I can't remember the actor's real name. But I met him. I got him to sign the little picture of him being the Red Ranger. And I just asked him, like, hey, man, do you mind if we take a picture real quick? And he's like, that's going to cost extra.
Jesus.
And I'm like, thinking in my head, like, seriously, dude, you're going to charge me to take a picture of you with my phone? I mean, you should be glad that we still see you relevant after all these years. I understand you got to pay bills.
You don't even
but
know
holy
his
shit.
name.
Yeah, I know him as Rocky from the Power Rangers, and I understand you got to pay your bills, and maybe he hasn't had. I mean, obviously he hasn't had a big acting career afterwards because I don't know what else he's been in. But yeah, I was just like, man, the only person who was really humble at that convention that let me take a picture with him was the artist behind Marvel Zombies. He was a class act. Like, he was awesome. He signed my stuff. I got a picture with him. He was awesome.
But Rocky's a dick.
Rocky's a total dick.
Yeah. Now, real quick, the first Sentai that actually came here was Dynaman, the '83 series.
Okay.
And it was on the USA Network's Night Flight. And that was a show that was a comedy show, and they took 6 episodes of it and parodied it in like 5-minute segments.
Oh, wow.
So that's why, as a kid, I knew I had seen something like the Power Rangers before.
Yeah.
And it was on the USA Network. So, yeah, Zoo Ranger was not the first Power Rangers to come here.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, you talk to a lot of Power Ranger fans today that are adults. One of the things they always talk about is, all right, man, I would love to see a Power Rangers made for, our generation that's a little bit more dark and gritty. And I have to say, if you want to watch a more dark and gritty Power Rangers, watch Zoo Ranger.
Shit, yeah, watch the original.
Yeah, because
it's depressing.
Yeah, because it was aimed towards kids, and it's definitely got that kid-like thing to it. But the premises behind the show, like what made Rita Repulsa, or better known on that show,
Bandora.
Yeah, Bandora. What made her the person that she is a pretty dark story in Zoo Ranger. I mean, do you remember? Do you remember what happened with that? Would you want to elaborate on it?
Yeah, her kid gets killed by a dinosaur or something.
Yeah. So she sells her soul to Satan.
Yeah, so the bad guy really isn't her too.
Right.
It's what is it? It's Satan.
Yeah.
And at the end of the series, it's fucking 20 years, 30 years at this point. Might as well spoil it. But at the end of that series, she gets, basically Satan goes crazy. They fight a giant head called Great Satan.
Yeah.
Which I know is in the series is something else, but they fight a giant head and it's Great Satan. And at the end, she actually gets some redemption. Oh, and Goldar and Scorpina have a child.
Yeah.
Or Lammy. Scorpina's called Lammy for some reason. But they have a baby, and Bandora, it redeems Bandora. Something fucking weird.
It was so dark, and I remember the one thing she said when Bandora was like causing all this destruction, and her method of her madness, because she was going after all the children on Earth, and she was like, pretty much she was wanting to kill all the children on Earth.
She's a child murderer.
Yeah, because she was like, no parents know the true pain until they lose their child. And I'm like, holy shit, that's fucking dark.
Yeah.
That's a kids show in Japan.
But they the thing about Mighty Morphin though that I think has its charm is while it doesn't have that darkness and maturity to it, it's got the 90s charm to it.
Yeah.
It's a total, like, that show is totally a 90s series.
Yeah.
The way everyone dresses, the way the relationships are very Saved by the Bell like.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pure 90s show. No ifs and doubts about that.
And you watch it now as an adult, and you get that charm from the 90s, you know, that nostalgia and the Saved by the Bell elements that you talked about. But also you see it as a giant toy commercial.
Yeah, oh, it is.
Because I was saying, like, every other week, it's like, oh, there's a new Zord coming out.
Real quick, have you noticed that trend's gone?
Oh, yeah.
The kids, let's make a toy commercial for kids' cartoon, and it becomes something much more.
It's because kids don't play with toys anymore.
They still make tons of action figures, but they make them a Marvel and shit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those toys are, honestly, I think a lot of it's gauged more towards us, like the older generation now. Because, I mean, I think about, you know, my girlfriend's kids, they don't really play with action figures. I mean, they watch stuff on their phones or watch YouTube. You know,
my son doesn't.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's never really played with them when he was younger.
I couldn't go a day without playing my fucking action figures, man.
It's weird. But you know what? I'm sure there are kids who still play with them. There's got to be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just not in our realms.
Because I remember being a kid and having, like, I would sit there and put my own scenarios. I'd be like, Power Rangers teams up with He-Man and fight the Transformers. I would do shit like that.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
But yeah, that was good times.
Real quick, let's talk about one element of Power Rangers, Fox Kids. Did not Fox Kids have the best kids lineup?
They really did.
At the time?
Well, and also, you know, with the popularity of Power Rangers, we started getting other shows that Saban was coming out with. That was the same thing they were doing with the Sentai series, where they're taking, you know, those shows and turning them into another show. You remember shows like VR Troopers and Big Bad Beetleborgs?
Yup, and Masked Rider, which was Kamen Rider.
Mm-hmm. And there was
I remember Big Bad Beetleborgs or whatever.
And there was that other show too that it was like Cyber Squad Unit or something like that had Matthew Lawrence, and it looked like a bootleg Ultraman.
Yeah. What was that show called? And it was a Japanese show they took. I think Saban did do that one too.
Yeah, it was interesting because, like, I remember watching Ultraman and then seeing that come on TV, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's Ultraman. I'm looking up the show right now. But yeah, freaking Matthew Lawrence, Joey Lawrence's brother.
What was it called? Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad.
That's what it was.
And it was Dick Productions. And it was in the adaptation of the Japanese series Denko Shojin Gridman, or Gridman the Hyper Agent.
Yeah, because that show took place in cyberspace. Because I remember it was like this kid who was like kind of like the lanky of the main bad guy. The main bad guy was stuck in cyberspace and had this kid who was making all these like computer viruses, and it was up to Matthew Lawrence and his squad to like control this giant robot in cyberspace to fight the viruses. Okay, it was cool. I liked it.
Yeah, I remember that one. I remember he like had a PC or something, and there's a basement they hung around in.
Yeah, total 90s.
Yeah. So we got that one, and then we have, what else was there?
I mean, I remember VR Troopers, and I remember a lot of my friends and I didn't like VR Troopers because there were only three of them. As weird as that sounds, we're like, there's only three of them? That's
What about
lame.
what about Masked Rider?
I think by the time Masked Rider was coming out, I think that's when I was kind of dipping out of watching Power Rangers because that was a lot later on. Because I remember Masked Rider was made a cameo in, I believe, Power Rangers in Space. I believe he made a cameo on that. And by the time Power Rangers in Space came out, I was still watching it a little bit, but I wasn't into it as much. Because I do remember Power Rangers Lost in Space had the cameo with the Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation, which was pretty bad.
Well, yeah, let's. Oh, fuck. Let's not talk about that.
I mean, there is some redeeming with Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers going on now with the comics, though. I will say
Yeah,
that.
yeah. The way they did it, but back then, I don't. It was like a shitty put together thing.
Yeah. Which the Power Ranger comics, I will say, like, Power Ranger comics are awesome. Like, they have, like, I remember I was reading this one comic, they had an alternate timeline where Tommy starts having, like, post-traumatic stress disorder about being evil, and he ends up staying bad and becomes, like, he overthrows Rita and Lord Zed and becomes the new bad guy. He's like Lord Dragon.
Huh.
And he's like it's like a mixture of the white and green ranger, and he's a bad guy. I thought
Holy shit.
that was pretty fucking awesome.
That's pretty cool. That I'll have to check those out. The IDW comics, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I have to ask you something about Mighty Morphin. Do you remember about 5 years ago? And this reminded me because it sounds like we're on the topic of more mature Power Rangers interpretations. Do you remember that fan film that came out with James Vanderbeek?
Oh God. Yeah, I remember hating it, which is ironic because the same guy who made that fan-made trailer kind of short movie is the same guy that's doing the Castlevania show on Netflix, which is insane. Because I like the Castlevania show, but I hated that version of Power Rangers.
Was it what was it too dark? Was that the thing?
Yeah, I think it was so dark that it seemed like it was kind of just being like kind of making fun of itself. Like I think one of the Power Rangers was like an old like drug addict or something. I'm like, really? Like I think they said Billy was like a heroin addict or something. I'm like, what?
Bulk and Skull were drug addicts.
That's what it was.
And they overdosed. Like everyone died in a. Billy was killed because he was a homosexual.
Yeah.
and then what was it? Tommy and Kimberly? They were gunned down.
and then at the very end, like you find out Lord Zed's like a homeless guy. Like he picks up the Lord Zed rod and he's like, I am back now, and he was like a hobo. I'm like, what the hell is this? It was so dumb.
And then the Kimberly that was in the show was really Rita.
Yeah.
And then it ended with her attacking fucking Tommy. And it had fucking James Vanderbeek.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you knew it was bad when like you have Austin St. John and Jason Frank, the Red Ranger and the original Green Ranger. When you have them being like, we have no part in this, we don't want, they didn't even want to give their opinion on it, because say what you will, those two guys especially have really been almost became the ambassadors of the Power Rangers now. They go to conventions. They're very very much into the whole situation and being very humbled about it, and they hated it. And I remember I would complain about it online, and some people were like, well, this is like the Power Rangers for us. I'm like, no, this is Power Rangers meets Jerry Springer. This is not Power Rangers, You
know what, though? You know what got the more mature Power Rangers right, though, was the 2017 film.
I still need to see that. I still haven't seen it.
See, what it did was it matured. There's some really dark elements, but not to the point where it's like everyone's a drug addict or something.
Yeah.
They're not overdosing and shit like that.
Freaking, you don't have like the Black Ranger owing child support or something.
Yeah.
Man, I got to pawn my Mastodon Zord, man. I got to pay this child support.
Oh shit! You had stuff like the Pink Ranger was kind of bullied and just stuff like that, and they were
Yeah.
sort of outcasts. Jason was on. What was Jason's problem? He was like on fucking. He was like a troubled kid, and his dad was the sheriff and that type of stuff. But it's really good though. Trini was struggling with her sexuality, but they didn't like really push that in your face.
Yeah, and it had Bryan Cranston playing Zordon, who actually had a large part in the original Mighty Morphin. He did a lot of the voices for the monsters.
A lot of people forget early Bryan Cranston roles.
Yeah.
He was in a lot of anime dubs too in the 90s.
Yeah, and the second Black Ranger, actually, he's really into anime. I can't remember his name, but he does a lot
Johnny
of
Young Bosch.
Yeah, he does a lot of voice acting for anime. And matter of fact, he's the new voice actor for Broly for the Dragon Ball series.
And he voiced Kaneda in the second dub of Akira.
Mm-hmm.
He did Kaneda. He's done a ton of roles. And he's really well known in the anime. And he's a pretty decent guy from what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's that. And then Kimberly's been in several shows. Her big break was in Felicity, the J.J. Abrams show.
Yeah.
Which I never watched that.
Yeah, me either. But I think we're getting close to the hour mark on the show, I believe. But man, we could be talking about Power Rangers all day. So let me ask you this, Anthony. What was your favorite Power Ranger episode?
It was the episode, I remember watching this when Lord Zed pops up and he destroys the dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
And then they get the new Zords, which were borrowed from another Sentai series.
Yeah, because that's what they would do. They'd be like, we need to sell more toys. Let's get some more Japanese footage and throw in there.
But they never used the footage. But if you notice, in the second and third season, there were more American footage of the Power Rangers fighting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know this. There were a lot more footage of the Japanese of the American actors in the suits in the later seasons.
Yeah.
Because the Sentai series, that they couldn't use the old footage all the time.
Yeah, because I mean, it was getting to the point where you could notice it after a while.
Yeah, because Lord Zed used the new super putties or whatever, and they didn't have that in the Japanese version. Lord Zed was a wholly new creation too.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of, once you see the second season, a lot of those characters and such were original. Now, the White Ranger was borrowed from that other Sentai series that was after Zoo Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the only Japanese footage of a Power Ranger from that series in the second season. If I recall, I'm sure they... You know who would know more? Fucking Reploid Bill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he would definitely... My favorite Power Ranger episode was, just the whole Green Ranger saga. And I like, how the Green Ranger was bad and he turned good. But then it got to the point where he had the green candle and he was losing his powers. That was some serious shit back then. I was like, holy crap, he's no longer a Power Ranger. Like, it wasn't like, oh, he's going to save the day. Something's going to happen to the candle and he'll be fine. No, he straight up lost his powers. Mm-hmm. And, later on he turned into the White Ranger. But I remember how real that was. And I was just like, for a kid at the time, I was like, man, this is pretty intense.
And then remember with the Green Ranger, he died in the Sentai one.
He did, because wasn't he the Red Ranger's brother? Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, because I remember he died and the Red Ranger put on his golden vest. And I remember they used that in the Power Rangers episode. They used it for that, but it was in the original Zoo Ranger is because the Green Ranger died. I remember reading up and watching that. And what was really interesting is if you notice about the Green Ranger vest, you can always tell when it's actual American footage and Japanese footage. And the best way to tell with the Green Ranger is the vest. The vest in the Japanese version looked really, really good. The American version almost looked like it was made of cloth. Like, it was very, like foamy. that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting how they did that. They couldn't get the same material, it seemed.
But they did what they could do.
Yep, indeed. And I think this wraps up an episode, though, because we're hitting that hour mark. Like I said,
so what are we doing next time?
I think our next episode is actually going to be covering Castlevania Season 3, because March 5th.
It'll be our first follow-up show to the show we've already done.
Yep. It would actually be a follow-up to our first ever episode.
Yeah.
Because our first episode was all about Castlevania, and it's crazy to think that we're finally getting Season 3. I'll be honest, I'll do some like pre-show predictions or like talk real quick. I'm actually nervous about Season 3, I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Because it seems that they, Season 1 and 2, Season 1 especially, they stuck really close to the Castlevania lore. Season 2, they took some liberties, where Season 3, it seems like they're taking even more liberties. So it's going to be kind of interesting what their interpretation of Castlevania will be in Season 3.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to that episode to see what you think about it. And I'm really looking forward to watching it because, Dracula's not around anymore. Like, what are they going to do now?
Yeah, that's true.
I think the main focus is going to be Carmilla. I think she's going to be the baddie. She seems to have her own like vampire posse, which is, I don't know. It just seems really weird. I don't know what they're going to do with this.
We'll see come March 3rd.
I was going to say, I hope it's not.
Something.
Hope it's not September. Damn,
yeah.
I'm ready for it.
But hopefully we'll get a Season 4.
Yeah. If they play the cards right, they can make this into like a very long series. Because we haven't even tapped into the other Belmonts yet. We've only went through Trevor. We haven't went through Richter Belmont and Simon. And I think Simon would be the good like last season, like going into Simon Belmont.
Yeah. Are we still on Trevor?
Yeah.
Okay. Season 3 still has Trevor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to check us out on other podcast catchers, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher. We're on that, as well as if you're listening to us on YouTube, you can check out our archived episodes on YouTube as well. But anyway, guys, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll be blasting off to the next episode and cracking a whip for Season 3 of Castlevania.